When the mainstream media was doing everything they could to convince you that the opening weekend for Thor Love and Thunder was a huge accomplishment, incredible, the biggest we've ever seen for a Thor movie, it was very clear that they were doing a lot to cover themselves, because in reality, this was a disappointment. It came in under the industry projections. And with the recent trend that we've seen with Marvel movies, with the MCU in Phase 4, as people continue to be less and less interested in what Disney Marvel's doing moving forward, you knew in all likelihood this could be a massive box office drop. And that's exactly what I said. A lot of people didn't want to hear that. A lot of YouTube shills that didn't want to hear that or thought I was just being too negative because I don't like Marvel, they said that was insane for thinking like that. Well, here we are in the second weekend, and Thor Love and Thunder has dropped 68%. 68%. That is a record for an MCU movie. A record not for the best, but for the worst drop of all time. And it's tied with Black Widow. That was released on Disney Plus and in theaters at the same exact time. We heard the excuses back then. Now you're out of excuses. Now you have things like Top Gun Maverick that have made, $1.2 billion worldwide. That certainly didn't slow down. That certainly didn't have a big drop off its second weekend. There is no way you can excuse what's going on right now with this movie. And the reason that I pointed out that opening weekend and why you should be very shy about saying, well, this is just an absolute win, is because you had to predict that this massive box office drop was coming, because we've seen it before. I made the point that what we saw with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness made $450 million worldwide its opening weekend. Thor only made $300 million worldwide. So if you have the same exact drop off, if it tracks exactly the same way, you're talking about a worldwide gross for Thor Love and Thunder of somewhere around $650 million. That's about what it needs to break even. This is fucking pathetic. And when you look at the fact that Thor Love and Thunder in its second weekend makes $46 million, Thor Ragnarok in its second weekend, $57 million. So now what you're starting to see is you're going to start to see that after that little bit of an advantage you had in that opening weekend, things are going to start to tighten up. This movie cost nearly 40% more to make than Thor Ragnarok did, because Thor Love and Thunder cost $250 million. Thor Ragnarok only cost $180 million. That's why you have to take these things into consideration. That's why you can't just sit there and say, well, it's the best Thor movie ever. That means it's an absolute win. Not exactly. If you're only 15% outpacing Thor Ragnarok, but it costs 40% more, you better wait until you crown some achievements on Thor Love and Thunder. A lot of people didn't want to wait for that. A lot of people have made fools of themselves. And now, as you can see, this is how it compares to other recent MCU things in the pandemic era. Multiverse of Madness dropped 67%. No Way Home dropped 67%, even though that made a shit ton of money its opening weekend. Eternals, 62. Shang-Chi, 54. And it ties the record low second weekend drop of Black Widow at 68%. This spells bad news. Now, does this mean that it's going to lose money? We don't know. We're going to have to see how it tracks. Does it mean it'll break even? We don't know. But I do know that this movie has to make between $625 to $650 million to break even. Marvel's not in the business of breaking even. They don't have the China box office. People are not energized about this movie. It already feels like an afterthought. This is horrific news for the MCU. Some of us tried to tell people that just because it had a slightly disappointing opening weekend, but it was still really good, doesn't mean it's automatically a victory. This movie has work to do to even make money. And there's no other way that you can really look at this movie right now other than a disappointment. Some people might not want to hear it. The mainstream media might not want to hear it. But at this point, it's the truth. Maybe it'll take off big in its third weekend. Maybe all of a sudden it'll track really well. Somehow, I doubt it.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.